The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the dusty church in Chloride, New Mexico territory. And even before the door opened, folks gathered on the street could hear the sound of a woman crying inside. It was late September in 1883, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small mining town nestled in the Black Range Mountains. The church bell had stopped ringing 15 minutes ago, and everyone knew what that meant. Another wedding about to happen, though by the sounds coming from that coach, this bride was not exactly filled with joy. Amelia Xavier stood on the church steps, adjusting his hat and trying not to look as uncomfortable as he felt in his Sunday best. He was a ranch hand, a cowboy through and through, and the only reason he was at this wedding was because his boss had insisted the whole crew attend. Some wealthy businessman from back east was marrying a local girl, and apparently it was supposed to be the social event of the season. Amelia was 24 years old, lean and weathered from years of working cattle drives and managing the sprawling ranch that bordered the town. His dark hair was neatly combed for once, and he had even trimmed his beard that morning. The stagecoach door opened, and two women emerged first, both dressed in fine clothes that looked out of place in this rough mining town. They turned back toward the coach, reaching in to help someone else out. When the bride finally stepped down, the whole crowd went quiet. She wore a wedding dress that must have cost more than most folks in Chloride made in a year. White silk and lace, with a long veil that covered her face completely. But even through the delicate fabric, everyone could see the veil was damp, darkened with moisture. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs as the two women, presumably her attendants, gripped her arms and practically dragged her toward the church entrance. Amelia felt his stomach turn. He had seen plenty of arranged marriages in his time, but this was something else entirely. This woman was being led to the altar like a prisoner to the gallows. As they passed by him on the steps, he caught a glimpse of delicate hands clutching a bouquet of wildflowers so tightly that some of the stems had broken. One of the attendants whispered harshly, "Francesca, please, you are making a scene. Think of your family." The bride, Francesca, only cried harder. Amelia found himself moving without thinking, stepping into their path. "Madam," he said quietly, addressing the bride, "are you all right?" One of the attendants, a severe-looking woman with gray streaks in her dark hair, glared at him. "This is none of your concern, young man. Please step aside." "I was not asking you," Amelia said, keeping his voice level but firm. He looked at the veiled figure whose crying had momentarily stopped. "Miss, are you walking into that church of your own free will?" the severe woman gasped. "How dare you? Do you know who we are, who she is marrying?" "I do not much care," Amelia replied. "I am asking the lady herself." For a long moment nobody moved. The crowd on the street was silent, watching this unexpected drama unfold. Then, very slowly, Francesca lifted her head. Through the veil, Amelia could make out the shape of her face, the glint of her eyes, but nothing more. She started, her voice barely a whisper. "I cannot, Francesca Gloria. You will stop this nonsense immediately," the severe woman hissed. "Your father arranged this marriage to save your family from ruin. Harold Pemberton is a respected man, and he has been more than generous in. He is 47 years old and I am 18, Francesca said, and suddenly her voice was stronger, louder. "He knew my mother. He bounced me on his knee when I was a child. And now I am supposed to," her voice broke again, dissolving into sobs. Amelia felt anger rising in his chest. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it confirmed made his blood boil. He looked toward the church doors where a portly man in an expensive suit was emerging, looking irritated. "What is the delay?" the man called out. "This must be Harold Pemberton." Bring her inside. The preacher is waiting. Sir, Amelia said, stepping fully between the bride and the church. I think maybe this wedding needs to be postponed. Pemberton's face flushed red. Who in blazes are you? Get out of the way, Cowboy. My name is Amelia Xavier, and I am standing right here until the lady tells me herself that she wants to go through with this. The crowd murmured. Pemberton sputtered, looking around for support. The severe woman tried to pull Francesca around Amelia, but the young bride suddenly wrenched her arms free and stumbled backward away from all of them. No, she said, her voice shaking but determined. No, I cannot do this. I am sorry, truly I am, but I cannot marry you, Mr. Pemberton. I cannot. Your father's debts, Pemberton started, will have to be resolved some other way, Francesca said. I am sorry for his gambling, I am sorry for everything, but I will not sell myself to fix his mistakes. The severe woman looked like she might faint. Francesca, think about what you are saying. Your family will be destroyed. Your sisters will have no prospects. Your mother, my mother would not want this for me, Francesca said, and Amelia could hear she was crying again. She told me before she died that I should marry for love, that I should be happy, and this is not happiness. Pemberton's face had gone from red to purple. You little fool. Do you think anyone else will have you now? You will be ruined. Your whole family will be ruined. Then we will be ruined, Francesca said. She turned toward Amelia, though she still had not lifted her veil. Sir, I do not know you, but thank you. Thank you for asking. No one else did. Amelia felt something shift in his chest as he looked at this brave young woman. What will you do now, miss? I do not know, she admitted. I suppose I will go home and face whatever comes. The severe woman had recovered enough to speak again. The Gloria family home has already been seized by the bank. There is nowhere to go home to. That was part of the arrangement. Mr. Pemberton paid off the debts and purchased the house for you as a wedding gift. Then I will go, Francesca faltered. I will go somewhere, anywhere. Pemberton sneered. You will not last a week on your own, girl. You have never worked a day in your life. You will come crawling back, begging me to still take you. Something in Amelia snapped. He stepped forward, moving close enough to Pemberton that the older man had to tilt his head back to meet his eyes. I think you should leave now, sir. The lady has made her choice. This is not over, Pemberton spat. But he turned and stalked away, shoving through the curious crowd. The severe woman and the other attendant exchanged glances, then hurried after him, abandoning Francesca on the church steps. The crowd began to disperse, disappointed that there would be no wedding after all. Soon it was just Amelia and Francesca standing there in the afternoon sun. Miss Gloria, Amelia said gently, do you have any family in town? Anyone who might help you? She shook her head. My father and sisters left 2 days ago for San Francisco. They assumed I would be married and settled. I do not even know how to reach them. What about friends? Another shake of her head. We only moved to Chloride 6 months ago. I have not had time to make real friends. And now that I have broken this engagement, I doubt anyone will want to associate with me. Mr. Pemberton is an important man. Amelia thought for a moment. I might know someone who can help. There is a widow woman who runs a boarding house on the edge of town. She is a good, kind person. Maybe she would have a room you could take, at least for now. I have no money, Francesca said quietly. Only what I am wearing, and I suppose I will have to return this dress eventually. It was purchased for the wedding. Let us worry about that later, Amelia said. First, let us get you somewhere safe and comfortable, then we can figure out the rest. Francesca looked up at him, and he could see her studying him through the veil. Why are you helping me? You do not know me. Because it is the right thing to do, Amelia said simply. And because no woman should be forced into a marriage she does not want, not in this day and age, not ever. She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. Thank you, Mr. Xavier. Just call me Amelia," he said, offering her his arm. "Come on, let us walk. It is not far." She hesitated, then took his arm. As they started down the street, Amelia noticed she was still crying softly, the tears continuing to darken her veil. Without thinking, he stopped and turned to face her. "Miss Gloria," he said gently. "Francesca," she whispered. "Please just call me Francesca." "Francesca," he said and reached up carefully. "Your veil is stained with tears." Very slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he lifted the delicate fabric, folding it back over her head. "Let me see your smile." What he saw took his breath away. She was beautiful, yes, with dark hair pinned up in an elaborate style, warm brown eyes still glistening with tears, and delicate features. But it was not her beauty that struck him. It was the vulnerability in her expression, the fear and hope and relief all mixed together. She was not smiling, not yet, but as their eyes met, the corners of her mouth lifted just slightly. "There," he said softly. "That is better. You should not hide such a lovely face." A tear rolled down her cheek, but this time she was almost smiling. "I am not sure I have anything to smile about at the moment." "You are free," Amelia pointed out. "That seems like something worth smiling about." Her smile grew a little wider. "I suppose you are right, though I am also homeless, penniless, and likely scandalous." "Those are temporary problems," Amelia said. "Being married to a man you did not love would have been permanent." She laughed then, a small, shaky sound, but genuine. "You have a point, Mr. Xavier. I mean, Amelia." They started walking again, her veil now pushed back so he could see her face. People stared as they passed, some openly curious, others disapproving. Amelia ignored them all, keeping his attention on Francesca. "Tell me," he said as they walked. "What did you want to do with your life? Before all this happened?" She looked surprised by the question. "I am not sure anyone has ever asked me that before." "Well, I am asking now." Francesca thought for a moment. "I used to love drawing and painting. My mother encouraged it when I was younger. I would spend hours sketching the landscapes, the people, anything that caught my eye. I dreamed of maybe illustrating books someday, or teaching art. But my father said those were foolish notions, that a woman's place was to marry well and manage a household." "Your father sounds like he does not know what he is talking about," Amelia said bluntly. She laughed again, more freely this time. "Perhaps not. Though I suppose I should not speak ill of him. He did what he thought was best in his own way." "Best for him, maybe," Amelia muttered. They reached the boarding house, a neat two-story building with a fresh coat of whitewash and flower boxes under the windows. Amelia knocked on the door, and after a moment, it opened to reveal a stout woman in her 50s with kind eyes and flower on her apron. "Amelia Xavier," she said with a warm smile. "What brings you here on a Sunday afternoon? And who is this young lady?" "Mrs. Harriet Thornton. This is Miss Francesca Gloria. She has found herself in need of a place to stay. I was hoping you might have a room available." Harriet looked between them, taking in Francesca's wedding dress and tear-stained face, and understanding dawned in her eyes. "I see. Yes, I have a room. Come in, both of you." They stepped into the tidy parlor, and Harriet gestured toward a comfortable-looking sofa. "Sit down, dear. You look like you have had quite a day. Can I get you some tea? Something to eat?" "Tea would be wonderful, thank you," Francesca said quietly. As Harriet bustled off toward the kitchen, Francesca sank onto the sofa and finally let herself relax slightly. She looked at Amelia, who remained standing, hat in his hands. "I do not know how I will repay you for this," she said. "For any of this." "There is nothing to repay," Amelia said. "I am just glad I was there. But I have no way to pay for a room here. I have nothing." Harriet returned with a tray of tea and small cakes. "Now, let us not worry about that just yet. First things first, dear. Let us get you out of that wedding dress and into something more comfortable. I think I have something that might fit you." She looked at Amelia. "You are a good man for helping her, Amelia. Your mother would be proud." Amelia felt his throat tighten at the mention of his mother who had died 3 years ago. "I hope so." "Why do you not come back tomorrow?" Harriet suggested. "Let Francesca get settled tonight. We can all talk in the morning about what comes next." Amelia nodded, understanding he was being politely dismissed. He looked at Francesca. "Will you be all right?" She smiled at him, a real smile this time. "I will be fine. Thanks to you, thank you, Amelia, for everything." "I will see you tomorrow then," he said, and with a nod to Harriet, he let himself out. As he walked back through town toward the ranch, his mind was full of thoughts of the young woman he had just met. He had acted on instinct, stepping in to help her, but now he found himself wanting to do more. There was something about Francesca that drew him in, something beyond her beauty. She had shown remarkable courage, standing up to Pemberton and her family's expectations, even knowing what it would cost her. When he reached the ranch, his boss, Mr. Thomas Fletcher, was waiting on the porch. Fletcher was a fair man in his late 50s, weathered and tough but with a good heart. "Heard you caused quite a stir in town today," Fletcher said, lighting his pipe. "Stopped a wedding, they tell me." Amelia sat on the porch railing. The bride did not want to go through with it. "I just gave her the chance to say so." Fletcher puffed on his pipe thoughtfully. "That was Harold Pemberton's wedding you disrupted. He is not going to forget that." "I do not much care what Harold Pemberton thinks," Amelia said. "I know you do not, and I am not saying you did wrong. From what I hear, that girl was being forced into something she wanted no part of. But Pemberton has influence in this territory, could make things difficult." "Then things will be difficult," Amelia said. "It was still the right thing to do." Fletcher smiled slightly. "You sound like your mother." "She never backed down from what was right either." He stood, stretching. "The girl, she got somewhere to go. She is staying at Harriet Thornton's boarding house for now, but she has no money, no family here. I'm not sure what she is going to do." "Harriet could use help around that place," Fletcher mused. "She has been saying for months that it is getting too much for her to manage alone. Maybe the girl could work for her board." Amelia felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "That is a good idea. I will suggest it tomorrow." "You going back tomorrow then?" "I said I would check on her." Fletcher gave him a knowing look. "She pretty, she is brave," Amelia said. "That is more important. Did not answer my question." Amelia felt himself flush slightly. "Yes, sir, she is pretty." But that is not why. Fletcher held up a hand, laughing. "Easy, son. I am just teasing. You are a good man, Amelia. If you want to help this girl, you have my blessing. Take tomorrow off if you need to. The cattle can wait." "Thank you, sir." That night, Amelia lay in his bunk in the ranch hand's quarters, unable to sleep. He kept seeing Francesca's face, the way she had looked when he lifted her veil, the fear and hope in her eyes, the small smile when he had told her she was free. He had known her for less than an hour, but something had shifted in him. Something had changed. Across the room, his fellow ranch hand, Charlie Moss, spoke up in the darkness. "You awake, Amelia?" "Yeah. That was quite a thing you did today. The whole town is talking about it." "I just did what anyone should have done." "But nobody else did," Charlie pointed out. "They all just stood there and let it happen. You were the only one who stepped up." Amelia did not know what to say to that. "You sweet on her?" Charlie asked. "I barely know her." "That was not what I asked." Amelia thought about it. "I do not know. Maybe. She is remarkable, Charlie. She stood up to all of them, chose an uncertain future over a comfortable life she did not want. That takes real courage." "Or real foolishness," Charlie said, but not unkindly. "I hope it works out for her, for both of you." "Nothing is happening between us," Amelia protested. Charlie laughed. Sure, keep telling yourself that. Night, Amelia. Night. But Charlie was right. Amelia realized something was happening even if he did not fully understand it yet. In the space of an hour, Francesca Gloria had walked into his life and turned everything upside down, and he had a feeling things were never going to be quite the same again. The next morning, Amelia was up before dawn as usual. He did his chores around the ranch, helped feed the horses, and checked on the cattle in the near pasture. But his mind was elsewhere, counting the hours until he could reasonably go into town and check on Francesca. Finally, around mid-morning, he saddled his horse and rode into Chloride. The town was quiet on this Monday morning, most folks going about their usual business. He tied his horse outside the boarding house and knocked on the door. Harriet answered, smiling when she saw him. "Good morning, Amelia. Come in. Francesca is in the kitchen helping me with breakfast." He followed her through to the kitchen, where he found Francesca standing at the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal. She had changed out of the wedding dress and now wore a simple calico dress that must have belonged to Harriet. Her hair was pulled back in a loose braid, and her face looked more rested than it had yesterday, though her eyes were still red-rimmed. She looked up when he entered and smiled. "Good morning, Amelia." "Good morning," he said, suddenly feeling awkward. "How are you?" "Better," she said. "Harriet has been very kind. We have been talking about me possibly working here in exchange for room and board." "That is wonderful," Amelia said, relieved. "That was actually what I was going to suggest." Harriet poured coffee for all of them. "Sit down, both of you. Let us talk this through properly." They sat at the kitchen table, and Harriet laid out her proposal. She needed help with cooking, cleaning, and managing the boarding house, which currently had 3 long-term tenants besides Francesca. In exchange, Francesca would have her own room, meals, and a small weekly wage for personal necessities. "It is not glamorous work," Harriet said honestly, "but it is honest and it is better than having nowhere to go." Francesca nodded earnestly. "I am grateful for the opportunity. I know I do not have much experience with this kind of work, but I am willing to learn. I want to earn my keep." "I can see that," Harriet said warmly. "We will start today then. Nice and easy, just learning the routine." They talked for a while longer, discussing practical matters. Amelia mostly listened, watching Francesca as she spoke. She seemed different this morning, more settled despite everything that had happened. There was a determination in her eyes that had not been there yesterday, or maybe it had been hidden under all the fear. Eventually, Harriet excused herself to attend to something upstairs, leaving Amelia and Francesca alone in the kitchen. "I cannot thank you enough," Francesca said quietly. "If you had not been there yesterday, I do not know what would have happened. I might have gone through with it just because I was too afraid to stand up for myself." "But you did stand up for yourself," Amelia pointed out. "I just asked the question. You gave the answer. Still, it helped, having someone on my side." She looked down at her coffee cup. "I have been thinking about what Mr. Pemberton said, about me being ruined. He is probably right. No respectable man will want to court me now." "Then respectable men are fools," Amelia said firmly. "What you did took courage. Any man worth having would see that." She looked up at him, and something passed between them, a moment of connection that made Amelia's heart beat faster. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked impulsively. "I know you probably have work to do, but maybe just for a little while, I could show you around Chloride properly." Francesca glanced toward the door where Harriet had disappeared. "I should ask Harriet first." "Ask me what?" Harriet called from the hallway. She appeared in the doorway, smiling knowingly. "Go on, dear. Take a walk with this young man. Your work can wait an hour or two." So they found themselves walking through the streets of Chloride together, Francesca having thrown a shawl over her shoulders against the morning chill. Amelia pointed out the various buildings and businesses, told her a bit about the town's history as a silver mining camp, and shared stories about some of the local characters. "It is a rough place," he admitted, "but there is good people here too. The kind who will help a neighbor when times are hard." "Were you born here?" Francesca asked. "No, I was born in Texas. My parents brought me west when I was just a baby looking for better opportunities. My father was a ranch hand like me. He died when I was 12. After that, my mother and I settled here in Chloride. She took in laundry and sewing to make ends meet. I worked odd jobs until I was old enough to hire on at the Fletcher Ranch full time." "Your mother, she is gone too," Amelia nodded. 3 years ago, fever. It was fast at least. She did not suffer long. "I am sorry," Francesca said softly. "My mother died last year, consumption. It was slow and terrible, watching her fade away." They walked in companionable silence for a moment, united in their shared grief. "Is that why your father agreed to the marriage?" Amelia asked. "To Pemberton, partly. Mother was the one who managed the household finances. After she died, we discovered father had been gambling for years, hiding his debts. She would never have allowed it if she had known. When it all came out, we lost everything. Father was desperate. Pemberton offered a solution, and father took it without even asking me how I felt. Where are your sisters now?" "San Francisco, with father. He has a cousin there who agreed to take them in. I was supposed to stay here as Pemberton's wife." "There was not room for all of us with father's cousin," he said, "and besides, I would be married and settled. But now," she shrugged helplessly, "I do not know. Maybe I should try to get to San Francisco somehow, but I have no money for the journey, and I am not sure I would be welcome after breaking the engagement." "You could write to them," Amelia suggested. "Let them know what happened and that you are safe." "I suppose I should. Though I dread thinking what father will say." They had reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open desert dotted with scrub, brush, and cacti. In the distance, the Black Range Mountains rose against the blue sky. "It is beautiful here," Francesca said, gazing at the view. "Different from anywhere I have lived before." "Where did you live before?" "All over, really. Father moved us around a lot when I was growing up. Kansas City, Denver, Santa Fe. We only came to Chloride because father heard about the silver boom and thought he could make money. Instead, he just lost more at the card tables." Amelia watched her face as she spoke, noting the way the sunlight caught in her dark hair, the delicate line of her profile. He found himself wanting to know everything about her, every story, every thought. "Francesca," he said, and she turned to face him. "I know this is forward of me and you can tell me no if you want, but would you allow me to call on you, properly I mean, court you if you are willing?" She looked startled. "Amelia, we barely know each other." "I know. But I would like to know you better, if you are agreeable." She studied him for a long moment. "What about what Pemberton said, about me being ruined, about no one wanting me? I already told you what I think of that. And you do not care what people might say, not even a little bit." A slow smile spread across her face. "Then yes, Amelia Xavier, you may call on me. I would like that very much." They grinned at each other like fools, and Amelia felt his heart soar. He offered her his arm, and they turned back toward town, walking close together. Over the next few weeks, Amelia became a regular visitor at the boarding house. He would come by after work, cleaned up and presentable, and he and Francesca would sit on the porch or walk through town together. They talked about everything, learning each other's histories, dreams, fears. Francesca told him about her childhood, moving from town to town, always feeling like she did not quite belong anywhere. Amelia shared his memories of his parents, his love for the open range, his dreams of maybe having his own small ranch someday. Harriet chaperoned when propriety demanded it, but she was not strict about it. She seemed to approve of the match, often leaving them alone on the porch for longer than was strictly proper. Francesca adapted quickly to her new life. She learned to cook, clean, manage the boarding house accounts, and deal with the tenants. Harriet told Amelia privately that the girl was a natural, that she had never had such capable help. But there were difficulties, too. Pemberton made good on his threat to make things difficult. He spread rumors around town about Francesca, calling her ungrateful and immoral for breaking their engagement. Some of the more respectable citizens began to shun her, crossing the street when they saw her coming. The local ladies' society, which had initially welcomed her, now refused to let her attend their meetings. Francesca bore it with grace, but Amelia could see it hurt her. "I knew there would be consequences," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch swing. "I just did not realize how much it would sting." "They are fools," Amelia said angrily. "All of them. Maybe, but they are influential fools. Harriet has lost 2 tenants because of me. People who decided they did not want to stay somewhere that housed a scandalous woman. Harriet does not blame you for that, I know, but I blame myself." Amelia took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "You did nothing wrong. You chose your own path instead of letting someone else choose it for you. That is not scandalous. That is brave." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You always know what to say." "Not always. But I mean it." One Saturday afternoon in late October, Amelia took Francesca out to the Fletcher ranch. He wanted her to see where he worked, to meet his boss and the other hands. Fletcher welcomed her warmly and gave them permission to take a ride around the property. Amelia saddled up 2 horses, and they rode out across the rangeland together. Francesca had learned to ride as a child, and she sat her horse confidently, her face alight with joy as they cantered across the open ground. They stopped on a rise that overlooked the entire valley. Below them, cattle grazed peacefully. In the distance, the mountains were turning purple in the afternoon light. "This is what I love about the West," Amelia said. "This open space, this freedom. Back east, everything is crowded and proper and rules. Out here, a person can be who they really are." "Is that who you are?" Francesca asked. "A cowboy on the open range. I think so. At least it is part of who I am. What about you? Who are you really?" Francesca thought about it. "I am still figuring that out. All my life I was told who I should be. My father's daughter, a proper young lady, a suitable wife. But I never got to decide for myself. Now I am doing that, but it is harder than I thought. Being free to choose also means being responsible for those choices." "You are doing wonderfully," Amelia assured her. "Am I? I am working as a maid in a boarding house. I have been rejected by polite society. I have no prospects beyond what I am doing now." "So make new prospects," Amelia said. "You told me you wanted to draw and paint. Are you still doing that?" She looked down at her hands. "I have not had time, and I do not have proper supplies." "Make time. Find supplies. If that is what you love, you should do it. It seems frivolous when I am barely making my own way." "It is not frivolous. It is part of who you are." She smiled at him, that radiant smile that made his heart skip. "You really believe that, do not you?" "I do." "Thank you, Amelia, for believing in me, for seeing me as more than just a scandal or a burden." "You are not a burden," he said firmly. "You are remarkable, and I am falling in love with you." The words were out before he could stop them. They had been courting for less than a month, and by all conventional standards, it was too soon to speak of love. But Amelia had never been good at following conventional standards. Francesca's eyes went wide. "You are." "I am. I know it is fast, and if you need more time, I understand. But I wanted you to know." She reached over and took his hand. "I am falling in love with you too. I have been trying not to, trying to be practical, but I cannot help it. You are the first person who has ever really seen me, really listened to me. How could I not love you?" Amelia dismounted and helped her down from her horse. They stood there on the hillside, holding each other, the horses grazing nearby. Then he kissed her soft and sweet and felt her kiss him back. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were grinning. "So what do we do now?" Francesca asked. "Now we keep seeing each other, keep learning about each other, and when the time is right, I am going to ask you to marry me. When the time is right. I want to do this properly. I want to save up some money, maybe find us a little place of our own. I do not have much, Francesca, but I am a hard worker. I can provide for you. I can work too," she pointed out. "We can build something together." "Together," Amelia agreed. "I like the sound of that." They rode back to the ranch house as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Fletcher saw them coming and smiled knowingly, but said nothing. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Amelia and Francesca spent every free moment together. He bought her a set of watercolors and sketch paper for Christmas, and she was so touched that she cried. She painted him a portrait of his mother, working from his descriptions, and he treasured it. In January of 1884, Pemberton finally left Chloride, his business interests taking him to Denver. With him gone, some of the social pressure on Francesca eased. The townspeople who had shunned her began to cautiously accept her again, especially as they saw how hard she worked and how devoted she and Amelia were to each other. By spring, Amelia had saved enough money for a down payment on a small piece of land just outside town. It was not much, just a few acres with a modest house and a barn, but it was theirs. He proposed to Francesca on the porch of that little house, getting down on one knee with a simple gold ring. "It is not fancy," he said, "and I know I am not much of a catch, just a cowboy with big dreams and a small piece of land, but I love you with everything I have. Will you marry me?" Francesca was crying, but these were happy tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married in June, a small ceremony in the same church where Francesca had almost married Pemberton a year before. This time, though, she walked down the aisle beaming, her veil thrown back, holding a bouquet of wildflowers that Amelia had picked himself that morning. Harriet stood up with her, and Charlie Moss stood up with Amelia. Fletcher gave her away, having grown fond of the young woman over the months. The whole thing was simple and short, but it was perfect. At the reception in Harriet's boarding house, Francesca pulled Amelia aside. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I wrote to my father months ago telling him I was safe and what had happened. He wrote back yesterday. The letter just arrived." "What did he say?" "He is angry, of course. He says I have brought shame on the family. But he also says that my sisters are doing well. The youngest, Frances, is engaged to a shop owner's son. A good man, she says in her note, someone she chose for herself, and father finally admitted he has a gambling problem. He has joined a group in San Francisco that helps with such things. He is trying to change. That is good news, it is. I am not sure we will ever be truly reconciled, but at least there is hope. And knowing my sisters are all right, that Frances is not being forced into anything, that means everything to me." Amelia pulled her close. "I am glad. You deserve to have peace with your family." "I have you now," she said. "You are my family." "Always," he promised. They moved into their little house, and Francesca continued to work part-time at the boarding house while Amelia worked at the Fletcher Ranch. In the evenings, they would work together on their own land, building a chicken coop, planting a garden, fixing up the house. It was hard work, but they did it together, side by side. Francesca set up a little studio in the spare room and began painting in earnest. She painted landscapes of the New Mexico territory, portraits of locals, scenes from daily life. Her work was good, really good, and word began to spread. People started commissioning pieces from her. A local merchant asked if he could display some of her paintings in his shop, and they sold quickly. "You were right," she told Amelia one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "About pursuing what I love, it does not feel frivolous, it feels right." "I am proud of you," he said. "You have come so far from that scared girl crying in a wedding dress." "I was not scared of getting married," Francesca corrected gently. "I was scared of losing myself, of becoming someone I was not. With you, I never have to be anyone but who I really am." In the fall of 1885, Francesca discovered she was expecting their first child. They were both thrilled and terrified in equal measure. Harriet helped Francesca through the pregnancy, sharing her wisdom from raising her own children years before. On a cold morning in March of 1886, their son was born. They named him Andrew Xavier, and Amelia wept when he first held his tiny son in his arms. "He is perfect," Francesca said from the bed, exhausted but glowing. "Just perfect. Like his mother," Amelia said, kissing her forehead. "Being parents changed them, deepened their love for each other." They were a team, working together to care for Andrew, to keep their little household running, to build the life they had dreamed of. When Andrew was 6 months old, an unexpected visitor arrived. Francesca's sister, Frances, now married and going by Frances Graham, came to visit with her new husband. She was 20 years old now, bright and happy, and she threw her arms around Francesca the moment she saw her. "I have missed you so much," Frances cried. "I am so sorry for everything that happened, for Father trying to force you into that horrible marriage." "It is all right," Francesca assured her. "Everything worked out as it should." Frances met Amelia and instantly approved. "He is nothing like Pemberton. I can see he really loves you." "I do," Amelia said. "More than anything." The sisters spent a week together, reconnecting, sharing stories. Frances told them that their other sister, Faith, was doing well too, teaching at a school in San Francisco. Their father was still struggling but had not gambled in over a year. "He talks about you sometimes," Frances said quietly to Francesca. "He regrets what he tried to do. He is too proud to say it in a letter, but I know he does." "Maybe someday we will reconcile," Francesca said. "But for now, I am content with my life here. I have Amelia, I have Andrew, I have my painting, and now I have you back. That is enough." When Frances and her husband left, heading back to California, Francesca cried. But they were bittersweet tears. "I am sad to see her go, but I am so happy that she is happy. That she found someone who loves her as much as you love me." Over the next few years, their little family thrived. Amelia was promoted to foreman at the Fletcher Ranch, which came with better pay. They used the extra money to expand their land, buying another few acres and some cattle of their own. Francesca's paintings continued to sell well. She even illustrated a book of Western poetry published by a press in Santa Fe. In 1888, they had another child, a daughter they named Florence. She had Amelia's dark hair and Francesca's expressive eyes. Andrew, now 2 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister. In 1890, Thomas Fletcher decided to retire, and he offered to sell the ranch to Amelia at a generous price. It was a huge opportunity, but also a huge risk. Amelia and Francesca talked about it for weeks, weighing the options. "It is what you have always wanted," Francesca said. "Your own ranch. But it would take all our savings, and we would have to take on debt besides. If anything went wrong, we could lose everything. Or we could succeed and build something amazing for our children, for their future." In the end, they decided to take the chance. They bought the ranch, renamed it the Xavier Ranch, and threw themselves into making it successful. It was hard work, harder than anything they had done before. There were times when they were not sure they would make it, when drought or disease threatened the herd, when the debts seemed insurmountable. But they persevered together. Amelia managed the cattle and the ranch hands. Francesca handled the business side, keeping the books, negotiating prices, making connections with buyers. And somehow they made it work. By 1893, the Xavier Ranch was thriving. They had paid off their debts and were making a real profit. They hired more hands and expanded their herd. They built a bigger, better house for their growing family. In 1892, they had welcomed another son, Arthur, and Francesca was expecting again. One evening in the summer of 1893, they sat on the porch of their new house, watching their children play in the yard. Andrew was 7 now, tall for his age and already fascinated by ranch work. Florence was 5, creative and imaginative like her mother. Arthur was toddling around at 15 months, getting into everything. "Sometimes I think about that day," Francesca said quietly, "in front of the church. When you asked me if I was walking in of my own free will." "I think about it too," Amelia admitted. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had not been there, if you had not asked?" "I try not to. It is too terrible to imagine." She reached over and took his hand. "I think I would have gone through with it. I was so scared and overwhelmed that I could not see any other option. I would have married Pemberton, and I would have been miserable for the rest of my life. But you did not. You chose differently. Because you gave me the choice. You saw me, really saw me when no one else did. You lifted my veil and asked to see my smile, and you have been making me smile ever since." Amelia lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "That is all I ever want to do, make you smile, make you happy. You do, every day." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over their land, their children's laughter filling the air. It had been 10 years since that fateful day in Chloride, 10 years since Francesca had stood on those church steps in a tear-stained veil. So much had changed, so much had grown. Their 4th child, another daughter they named Abigail, was born in early 1894. Their family was complete, Francesca declared, laughing as she juggled 4 children under the age of 8. Amelia agreed, though privately he thought he would have loved a dozen children if Francesca was willing. The years rolled on, bringing joy and sorrow in equal measure. In 1896, they received word that Francesca's father had passed away peacefully in his sleep. Francesca mourned him, complicated as their relationship had been. They took the children to San Francisco for the funeral, and Francesca finally reconciled with all her sisters. It was bittersweet, but healing. In 1898, when the Spanish-American War broke out, some of the younger ranch hands enlisted. Amelia was too old and had too many responsibilities at home, but he worried about those young men like they were his own sons. When they returned, safe and whole, he threw a celebration that the whole town attended. As the new century dawned in 1900, Amelia and Francesca found themselves reflecting on how far they had come. Andrew was 14 now, already working the ranch alongside his father. Florence was 12, showing real talent as an artist like her mother. Arthur was 8, wild and energetic and fearless. Abigail was 6, the baby of the family, sweet and gentle-natured. 17 years, Francesca said on their anniversary that June. "Can you believe it has been 17 years since we married? Best 17 years of my life," Amelia said. "Though I feel a lot older than I did back then. We both do, but I would not change a thing. Not even the hard times, the years we almost lost the ranch, especially not those," Francesca said firmly. "Those times tested us and proved that we could face anything together. They made us stronger." As their children grew, Amelia and Francesca found themselves with a bit more time for each other again. They took evening rides across their land, just the two of them like in the early days of their courtship. They traveled to Santa Fe and Albuquerque, attending art exhibitions and cattle auctions. They hosted gatherings at the ranch, becoming known for their hospitality. Francesca continued to paint, and her work gained regional recognition. A gallery in Santa Fe began representing her regularly. She painted portraits of local families, landscapes of the New Mexico territory, and scenes from ranch life. Her paintings captured something essential about the West, the beauty and harshness and freedom of it. Amelia expanded the ranch operations, diversifying into horse breeding alongside cattle. The Xavier Ranch became one of the most successful in the territory, known for quality stock and fair dealings. Young men sought apprenticeships there, knowing they would learn from the best. In 1905, Andrew, now 19, announced he was courting a girl from town, Sarah Mackenzie, the daughter of the general store owner. Amelia and Francesca liked her immediately. She was smart and capable with a good head for business and a kind heart. "She reminds me of you," Amelia told Francesca. "Strong and brave and knows her own mind." "Andrew is lucky to have found her," Francesca agreed. "Just like you were lucky to find me." "Lucky? I think I was blessed." Andrew and Sarah married in 1906, and they built a house on the ranch property. Andrew had proven himself as a rancher, and Amelia began transitioning more responsibility to him. Not retiring, not yet, but preparing for the future. Florence, at 20, had moved to Santa Fe to study art seriously. She wrote home regularly, full of excitement about her teachers and her work. She had her mother's talent and her father's work ethic, and Francesca predicted she would be even more successful than she herself had been. Arthur, at 16, was still wild but beginning to settle into the work of the ranch. He had a gift with horses, able to gentle even the most skittish animals. Amelia thought he might eventually take over the horse breeding side of the operation, and Abigail, at 12, was everyone's favorite. Sweet and thoughtful, she mediated disputes between her siblings, cared for the ranch animals with gentle competence, and brightened every room she entered. In 1907, Andrew and Sarah welcomed a son, making Amelia and Francesca grandparents for the first time. They named him Thomas, after Thomas Fletcher, who had given Amelia his start all those years ago. Holding his grandson for the first time, Amelia felt overwhelmed with emotion. "We made this," he said to Francesca. "Our choices, our love, it created all of this family, this legacy." "You made it possible," Francesca corrected gently. "If you had not stepped in that day, none of this would exist." "We made it possible," Amelia insisted. "Together." As they entered their 50s, Amelia and Francesca found a new rhythm. They handed more of the daily ranch operations to Andrew, while still maintaining oversight. They spent time with their grandchildren, eventually welcoming 3 more as Andrew and Sarah expanded their family and Florence married and had children of her own. On warm evenings, they would sit on the porch as they always had, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. "You ever regret it?" Amelia asked one evening in 1910. They were both 53 now, their hair going gray, their faces lined with years of sun and wind and laughter. "Regret what?" "Breaking that engagement, choosing this life. It has not always been easy." Francesca laughed. "Not for a single moment. Amelia, that day you lifted my veil and asked to see my smile, that was the day my real life began. Everything before was just prologue. And everything after. Everything after has been the greatest adventure I could have imagined. Building a life with you, raising our children, creating something meaningful. How could I possibly regret any of that?" Amelia took her hand, their fingers interlacing as naturally as breathing. "I love you," Francesca Xavier. I have loved you since the moment I saw you crying in that wedding dress. I will love you until my last breath. And I love you, she said. My cowboy, my hero, my partner in everything. They sat together as the stars came out, the sound of their grandchildren's laughter drifting from the house behind them. In the distance, cattle lowed softly. A coyote called in the hills. The night air smelled of sage and juniper. This was their life, built on a foundation of courage and love and partnership. It had started with a simple question asked at the right moment, with a veil lifted and a smile sought. And it had grown into something beautiful and lasting, something that would endure through their children and grandchildren for generations to come. In 1915, Arthur married a young woman he had met at a horse auction in Albuquerque. Her name was Grace, and she was as horse crazy as he was. They settled into another house on the ranch property, and Arthur took over the horse breeding operation entirely, freeing Andrew to focus on the cattle. Abigail, at 21, surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to study medicine. It was still unusual for a woman, but Amelia and Francesca had never been conventional parents. They supported her decision, and she went east to study at the Women's Medical College in Philadelphia. She is going to be amazing, Francesca said as they waved goodbye to Abigail at the train station. I am so proud of all our children. They are all following their own paths, making their own choices. Like their mother, Amelia said. You showed them how, by choosing your own path all those years ago. As they entered their 60s, Amelia and Francesca finally retired from active ranch management, though they still lived on the property in the big house. Andrew ran the cattle operation. Arthur ran the horses. Florence had become a renowned artist with a studio and gallery in Santa Fe, though she visited frequently with her family. And Abigail had returned from medical school to set up a practice in Chloride, serving the community as the territory's first woman doctor. The Xavier Ranch had grown into something beyond what Amelia and Francesca had ever dreamed. It employed dozens of people, supported multiple families, and was known throughout New Mexico territory for its quality and integrity. In 1916, New Mexico celebrated its 4th anniversary as a state, having achieved statehood in 1912. The Xaviers hosted a huge celebration on the ranch, inviting everyone they knew. There was music and dancing, food and drink, games for the children. At one point, someone called for a toast and everyone turned to Amelia. He stood, Francesca beside him, and looked out at the crowd. His children and their spouses. His 8 grandchildren, ranging from teenagers to toddlers. The ranch hands who had become like family. The townspeople who had supported them through the years. Friends old and new. I am not much for speeches, he began, and people laughed. But I want to say something. 33 years ago, I met a young woman who was facing the hardest decision of her life. She was scared and alone, being forced into something she did not want. I did not know her, but I asked her a simple question. I asked if she was walking into that church of her own free will, and she said no. Francesca squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with tears. That moment changed both our lives, Amelia continued, because she chose her own path, even though it was scary and uncertain, and I got to walk that path beside her. Everything you see here, this ranch, this family, all of it exists because of her courage. Because Francesca Gloria, as she was then, chose freedom over security, chose possibility over certainty, and chose, eventually, to take a chance on a cowboy who had nothing to offer but his love and his willingness to work hard. The crowd murmured appreciatively. So here is my toast, Amelia said, raising his glass. To courage, to choosing your own path, to love and partnership and building something that lasts. And most of all to my wife, Francesca, who has been my greatest adventure. To Francesca, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Francesca was crying now, happy tears running down her weathered cheeks. Amelia set down his glass and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as the celebration continued around them. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest, "for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me." "Thank you," he whispered back, "for saying no, for being brave, for choosing me." They danced that night under the stars, moving slowly to the music, surrounded by the life they had built. Amelia thought back to that young cowboy who had stepped in front of a church and asked a desperate question. He had no idea then where that moment would lead. He could never have imagined all of this, but he was grateful, so deeply grateful for every moment, every challenge they had faced together, every joy they had shared, every sunrise and sunset, every meal shared, every conversation, every touch. It had all been a gift. As they grew older still, into their 70s, their lives became quieter but no less rich. They spent their days in simple pleasures, reading together on the porch, taking short rides around the property, playing with their growing number of great-grandchildren. Francesca still painted, though her hands were not as steady as they once were. Amelia still consulted on ranch decisions, though the younger generation truly ran things now. In 1925, they celebrated their 42nd wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party and the whole family gathered. There were children everywhere, multiple generations of Xaviers, all descended from a chance meeting in front of a church in 1883. 42 years, Francesca marveled. More than half my life. Best half, Amelia said. Definitely the best half. They sat together at the head of a long table, surrounded by family, and Francesca looked at her husband with the same love and admiration she had felt when she was 18 and he was 24. "I would do it all again," she said. "Every moment, every choice. All of it. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, because they led us here." As the sun set on their anniversary celebration, their youngest great-grandson, a boy of 3, climbed into Francesca's lap. "Tell me a story, great-grandma," he demanded. "What kind of story?" "A story about when you were young." Francesca looked at Amelia and he smiled, knowing exactly which story she was going to tell. "Well," she began, "when I was a young woman, not much older than your mother is now, I was very unhappy. I was being forced to marry a man I did not love, and I felt trapped and scared. I stood in front of a church in my wedding dress, crying so hard that my veil was stained with tears, and then a cowboy came along." "Was it great-grandpa?" the little boy asked. "It was indeed. He was the bravest, kindest man I had ever met. He asked me if I wanted to get married, and when I said no, he helped me. He lifted my veil and said, 'Let me see your smile,' and even though I did not feel like smiling right then, I tried. Because he saw me, really saw me, when everyone else just saw what they wanted me to be. And then what happened? Then we fell in love," Francesca said simply, "and we got married for real because we chose each other. And we built this ranch and had your grandpa and your great-aunts and great-uncle, and all of you came from that choice, from that moment when he lifted my veil and asked to see my smile." The little boy thought about this. "I am glad he did that." "So am I," Francesca said, hugging him close. "So am I." As the years continued to pass, Amelia and Francesca aged gracefully together. They had their share of health problems, as anyone their age did, but they faced them together just as they had faced everything else. When Amelia developed a bad heart in his mid-70s, Francesca nursed him back to health with Abigail's medical guidance. When Francesca's eyesight began to fail, making it difficult for her to paint, Amelia described the world to her in such vivid detail that she could still create beautiful work. They lived to see New Mexico grow and change from a rough frontier territory to a proper state. They saw automobiles replace horses on the streets of Chloride. They saw electricity come to town. They saw their grandchildren grow up and have children of their own. But through all the changes, one thing remained constant: their love for each other, as strong at 75 as it had been at 25. Stronger, even deepened by decades of shared life. In the spring of 1930, as they approached their 47th wedding anniversary, Amelia fell ill. It was pneumonia, and at 71 his body struggled to fight it off. Francesca rarely left his bedside, holding his hand, talking to him, reminding him of all their years together. "You have to fight," she told him. "I am not ready to let you go yet." "I am trying," he whispered, his voice weak. "But Francesca, if it is my time, I want you to know something. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Loving you has been my greatest joy. I have no regrets." "You are not leaving me," she said fiercely. "Not yet. We have more sunsets to watch together, more grandchildren to meet, more life to live." And somehow, miraculously, he rallied. Slowly, over the course of several weeks, he regained his strength. By summer, he was back on his feet, weaker than before but alive. "You are stubborn," Abigail told her father affectionately. "Mother told you to live, and you were not going to disobey her." Amelia laughed. "I learned a long time ago not to argue with your mother. She is always right." That fall, as they sat on their porch watching the leaves turn gold, Amelia turned to Francesca. "I am glad you made me stay. I am glad you listened." They sat in comfortable silence, as they had so many thousands of times before. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and thriving under Andrew's and Arthur's management. In the distance, they could see some of their great-grandchildren playing. "We did good," Amelia said. "All of this. We did real good." "We did," Francesca agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, they held hands and watched together. They had watched thousands of sunsets from this porch over the decades. Each one was different, and each one was beautiful. "I love you," Amelia said, as he had said thousands of times before. "I love you too," Francesca replied, as she always did. They lived several more years together, growing frailer but never losing their devotion to each other. When Amelia finally passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1934 at the age of 75, Francesca mourned deeply, but took comfort in the life they had built and the family they had created. She lived for 3 more years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, painting when she could, sharing stories of the past, and keeping Amelia's memory alive. When she died in 1937 at the age of 72, she was laid to rest beside him in the cemetery overlooking Chloride. Their headstone was simple, bearing both their names and a single phrase that captured their love story. He lifted her veil and asked to see her smile. She showed him, and they built a life together. The Xavier Ranch continued to thrive for generations, a testament to what Amelia and Francesca had built through courage, love, and partnership. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren carried on their legacy, remembering the story of how it all began. The story of a crying bride and a brave cowboy who asked a simple question at exactly the right moment. The story of a veil lifted and a smile sought and found. The story of a love that changed everything.